presentation, Madhuchanda. I'm Asmita from All About Architecture, and I would be delighted to introduce our first speaker of the day, architect Shweta Pai, at present associated as a researcher at IIMB's Real Estate Research Institute. She will be giving us an overview of the real estate sector and its current scenario. Our speaker is an architect urban planner with over 16 years of experience in the real estate sector. She did her BArch from UVCE and holds a master's in urban planning from SPA Delhi. Along with an excelling career, she's a member of the Royal Institute of Chartered Surveyors and has been associated as a faculty member of SJB School of Architecture and Planning. Having worked as a head at Miragi Advisors Private Limited, her areas of expertise include development advisory, corporate real estate, urban infrastructure advisory, and real estate research. She's also worked with companies such as Western Global Workplace Services and UGL Equis in Bangalore, where she managed the accounts of key clients ranging from leading national and international developers, PE funds, government agencies, non-profit organizations, and landowners. She has an in-depth knowledge about key real estate markets, regulations, and policies in India, and has worked on a wide range of assignments covering residential, commercial, industrial, and hospitality sectors. So without further ado, Shweta Pai, everybody.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for the introduction, and thank you for giving me a chance to speak here. So what I would be talking about today is not a general overview of real estate sector in India. What I would be looking at is the real estate sector vis-a-vis sustainability practices and how we are trying to build sustainability practices in the real estate sector in India. So let me start off with that. So in the recently held, United Nations Climate Change Conference at Glasgow, India has made certain commitments, and we have committed to achieving net zero status by 2070. And by 2030, we have made certain promises. So we said we are going to reduce our carbon emissions by 1 billion ton. We are going to raise the non-fossil fuel energy capacity. Hello?
Sorry, Shweta Shairi here. Could you share your screen?
Oh, okay. You want me to? Okay.
Yeah.
Just,
I think, yeah.
Just give me a minute.
Yeah.
It says disabled participant screen sharing.
Let me see. Yes, you should be able to do it now.
Also, a small thing to say, if you and anybody have any questions to the presenters, please feel free to drop it in the chat, and we would love to have a feedback from you all after the workshop.
Can you all see the screen now?
Yes. Yes, ma'am.
So we were talking about the commitments that we have made for 2030. So one of them is reduction of carbon emissions. 1 billion ton reduction in carbon emissions, raising non-fossil fuel energy capacity to 500 gigawatts, thereby meeting 50% of our energy needs through renewables. So these are some of the commitments that we have made at COP26. And if you look at other reports, which also talk about, in the year 2019, building industry made the highest ever carbon dioxide emissions, at 10 gigatons of carbon dioxide. So we know that building industry is one of the largest users of energy and resources, as well as it is one of the largest consumers of water and also one of the largest generators of waste and water effluents, which has just been presented by Madhuchanda. So knowing this, it is very important for us to note that this decade between 2021 and 2030 is a very important one in the economic future of India, because this is the time that we have to actually capitalize on our demographic dividend. We are talking about, having the youngest population in the world. And if we want to really capitalize on this demographic dividend, this is the time that we have to work towards it. So there is going to be a lot of migration to our cities. We will be one of the most populated nations in the world. And 40% of India's population is going to be in the urban area, because cities are going to be the engines of economic growth. Obviously, people are going to move to cities in order to find employment, for education, and for various other things. So, and the number of cities which are 1 million plus is going to increase from the current number of 42 to 68 such cities in India. So the number of households are going to increase, because the size of households are becoming smaller and smaller. There are a lot of solo dwellers today. So it is going to increase to 386 million households by 2030. Plus, there is another important thing which we have to keep in mind. The income levels are also going to increase along with this. So currently, there are 1 in 4 households in India which are in the upper middle income and higher income segments. This is according to a report by Bain and Company and World Economic Forum. And what they say is that in the next decade, the number of households which are in these higher income groups is going to increase to 1 in 2 households in India. So with increasing population, increasing number of households, and increasing income levels, the consumption is going to increase. And at the same time, to house all the economic activities that we are going to promote over the next decade, a lot of real estate is going to be required to be built in this decade. So I mean, this is just the slide which shows how the income level pyramid is going to change. So this is the study that I told you about by Bain and Company and World Economic Forum. And if we go into how is the real estate sector going to change, India's building industry will emerge as the 3rd largest in the world over this decade. So I've just given you a comparison between what is it in 2020 and how is it going to look like in 2030. So if you look at the market size, this was already told by Madhuchanda in her presentation. We are currently a 180 billion USD real estate industry, the market size of the real estate sector in India. It is going to grow to a USD $1 trillion sector. So if you look at it in terms of the built space itself, what we observe is that office stock or office spaces in India, which is currently at 600 million square feet, is going to increase to 1 billion square feet. Residential units, which are, the most important requirement in cities, and also with the, sustainable development goal, where we are looking at giving a formal housing to everyone in the city. Trying to reduce the number of slum households. The number of residential units that are currently existing is about 1.5 million units. That is going to double over this century. So if you look at these statistics, what we understand is that the amount of built up space in our cities is going to double over the next decade itself. So consequently, the energy usage by buildings is likely to increase by about 800% by 20. This statistics is for 2050, but yes, it is going to grow at least by about 400%, 300% by 2030. Okay, so this gives us an understanding of what is it going to be like in 2030. So it is time that we work on both our economic goals, at the same time try to achieve them through sustainable means. So now let's understand how the building industry or the real estate industry is looking at sustainability. What is the current status? What is our green building footprint? And all such aspects. So when we talk about green buildings, a lot of us are still not aware. See, other than people in the building industry, I suppose, not many people, the common man who is the consumer of all these built space that we are providing, they are not really aware of what is green building. What a common man usually equates to green building is a lot of green landscape around a certain building, but that is not true. What we need to educate people about is the environmental footprint that these buildings are going to and the environmental impact that these buildings are going to make. So we need to make them aware that it's a green building doesn't just mean keeping the landscape green. It is also about conserving energy, conserving water usage, minimizing waste. That is another important thing, and promoting health and well-being of the inhabitants. So these are some of the important aspects that we have to make population in general aware of, And when we look at the cost benefits of green buildings, this is published material by IGBC. So it says the cost premium is, we are going to incur a cost premium of about 2 to 12%, while the benefits are multifold. So if you look at it in terms of energy savings, water savings, and all of that, it translates to about 30% reduction in operational expenses, and it is currently charging a premium of about 2% in rental, 2% rental premium, which is quite low. But then this is what it is currently, and the payback period for all the extra costs that we have incurred is about 5 to 7 years, which is not too long. So when we look at the evolution of sustainability practices in the built environment, the first stage is when buildings are built in the conventional way, where a lot of energy and resources are used. At the first stage, the effort is towards making the buildings more energy efficient, trying to promote the use of energy efficient appliances. And this is the time when all these regulations and ratings and all of them are in the development mode. So we are trying to work on different kinds of ratings and what works, what does not work. So it is a kind of an experimental stage, and a lot of these ratings are not mandatory, they're just voluntary. People are going for these ratings on a voluntary basis. But when we go to the next stage, where these regulations are already in place, city governments and state governments are asking for mandatory commitments where you have to bring down the energy usage in your buildings. So those become mandatory. And at this stage, a lot of smart building techniques are also included in the buildings. And it's not just for new buildings in the second stage, it is also for the existing buildings where a lot of retrofit happens, and we are trying to bring down the operational costs and such. Then when we go to the next stage, which is the net zero energy buildings, this is where, the amount of energy and resources that a building is using during its operation is also being created in terms of use of renewable energy and things like that. It could be on-site, it could be off-site, but it is a net zero energy building is where we go to. And then the fourth stage, where, that is the stage that all cities are actually aiming for, but we are nowhere near that right now. India is in somewhere, in the residential buildings in India are somewhere at stage 1, and the commercial buildings in India are somewhere going towards stage 2. I wouldn't say all commercial buildings. Let's look at it when we go into the details of that. And when we talk about carbon neutral buildings, it's not just about the operational emissions and the operational energy usage. It is also the embodied carbon. That means the amount of energy that is used in transportation, the carbon footprint that is throughout the life cycle of the building. So even during construction, if you are building material from bringing material from different cities, so there is a transportation cost involved in that. There's a lot of carbon footprint involved in all those things. So putting all those things into this and making the buildings carbon neutral is the ultimate goal, but we are in the very initial stages when it comes to the actual what it is in practice. So let's look at the green building footprint in India. So as already mentioned, the green certified buildings are less than 5% of the total built up stock in India. So I have statistics only about a lot of the published statistics is only about IGBC's green ratings. So the total registered footprint in India is about 7.83 billion square feet, and we are trying to achieve a target of 10 billion square feet by 2022. But this is only a registered number. So there is a huge difference between what is registered to what is certified. So if you look, I do not have the actual billion square feet number for the actual certified buildings. So IGBC's website gives us a number of 6,800 plus registered green buildings to 2,252 of them are actually certified. So that itself shows that from registration to certification, it goes down by 1/3. So if we look at it in terms of the actual built up area, I think that is much lower than 1/3. It's not even 30%. It is much lesser than that. It's somewhere close to 10 to 12% of the buildings that are registered for green certification are actually certified as green. So somewhere along the way, either it is the developers do not go ahead with it, or for whatever reasons they are not certified. Okay, but despite these numbers, that is, despite it being only 5% of the total built up stock, India is still currently ranked 4th in the world in terms of the green building footprint. So that is something which is very commendable, but this also shows that there is a huge potential for us in terms of achieving our to achieve our sustainability goals. And the green rating in India currently is voluntary; it is not mandatory. So the rating agencies in India, when we talk about the two important agencies are the Indian Green Building Council's LEED rating and TERI's the GRIHA rating by developed by TERI, and both of these are quite active. And if you look at GRIHA, they are also. One thing that we have to mention over here is that, see, there are many people who want to build sustainable properties. It could be individual homeowners who are very conscious about making properties that are sustainable, making homes that are sustainable, or maybe office spaces that are sustainable, but they're not going for these rating actually. So there is a conscious effort of making their buildings sustainable, but at the same time, it is not recorded anywhere as through a rating or such things. But GRIHA is TERI is definitely trying to compile all these different indigenous ways of construction, the vernacular systems of construction. There are many people who are doing it, but yes, it is not really included in the real estate sector's green building footprint. So when we talk about this 10 billion square feet and 7.83 billion square feet, many of these really sustainable and vernacular methods of architecture are probably left out. So that is something which I want to highlight over here. And other than that, there are the hospitality sector also uses a lot of other different rating like Ecotel and EarthCheck, Green Globe and all that, because many of the parent companies of these hotels are from different continents. They may be based out of Europe, USA and other places. And there are different rating systems over there. And for the hospitality sector, these ratings play a very important role. And therefore, these other ratings are also used even in India. So if we look at the regulatory initiatives by the government of India and as well as by some of the state governments. So first I will talk about the government of India things, and then we will go, when we go into the different sectors, we will look at what is happening at the state level and the city level as well. So when we look at the very important regulatory initiatives, the first and the foremost establishment of the Green Building Council by CII in India in the year 2001. In 2002, the Bureau of Energy Efficiency was established, and an important development was the Ministry of Environment and Forests making an environmental impact assessment necessary for all the buildings with a built-up area of up to 20,000 square meters. Apart from that, in 2007, BEE formulated the Energy Conservation Building Code, or the ECBC, which is currently, I think, notified by about 18 to 20 states in India, which is for commercial buildings, new commercial buildings in India. And recently in 2021, we have also come up with the Residential Building Energy Code, the Econivas Samhita. Okay, so these are some of the important regulatory initiatives that we have brought in to bring down energy usage in building and trying to make our buildings as sustainable as possible. So let's go into looking at what is happening in different sectors. So when we look at a lot of this data that is presented by IGBC and all that, we see that more than 50% of the buildings that are registered with IGBC and certified are mostly in the office sector. They are not the residential properties. Whereas when you look at the actual the real estate sector, 75% of the properties in the real estate sector is residential, whereas the remaining 25% accounts for all the other things like office and institutional and hospitality and all other sectors. Whereas if you look at the rating, it is mostly in the office sector. And why is that? What is the push factor for offices to go for this thing is mostly because one is the regulatory requirements, because these ECBC and such regulations are there. And the government is also focusing on these because office sector is the one which uses a lot of active and cooling techniques because of the kind of design that is adopted in these office buildings. So a lot of HVAC, and the energy usage in this sector is very, very high. So the focus has also been on the office sector. So when things become mandatory, people have to follow it. So that is one of the push factors for many of the office buildings to go for green ratings. The second and the most important aspect is the demand from occupiers and investors. Now, the high-end grade A office space in India today is looked at as investable office spaces by investors around the world. So there's a lot of FDI that is coming into India, and they are looking at buildings to invest in, office spaces to invest in. There are REITs that have come up in the, which have been listed in the country. So the investors are looking for properties which are green rated. Why? Because they have investor companies as well as occupiers, that is tenants who are occupying these space, big companies like Microsoft. All of them have very stringent ESG norms, and therefore when they are taking office spaces for their occupation, for working in India, they make sure that these are green rated buildings where energy usage is low. And so what happens is buildings which are in the high-end grade A office spaces, they are definitely following and they are complying with all these requirements, and they're also going for rating. That is one of the reasons why office spaces, the percentage of office spaces going for rating is much higher. Then, of course, now with the REITs and other things coming in, bringing down operational cost is very, very important, because the profitability of a company is based on that, because they are generating rent out of, they are running buildings which are generating rent, isn't it? So profitability of these buildings is very, very important. And how do you increase profitability? Yes, the operational costs have to come down. So that is one of the other push factors for, offices adopting these green ratings. And the other thing, of course, which is more recent because of COVID, office spaces have to be, I mean, people are looking for healthier buildings. They want to have a good indoor, air quality and all those kind of things. So the fourth factor, of course, is the healthier building aspect. So these are some of the things that I wanted to highlight about what is happening in the office sector and why they have adopted green on a large scale. Then when we come to the residential sector, although 75% of the real estate sector is residential, it is they are not giving so much importance to green rating. So why is this so? When we look at it, first of all, from the end user,
Hello.
green rating, that is reduction in operations cost and all those things, are accruing to the buyer. So why take the trouble of going through this entire rating process and spend on it and spend time and money on it? So that is the developer's perspective. So there are a few developers who are going for rating for all their buildings, but there are some who do not want to do this, do not want to go through this. Also because a lot of buyers are not willing to pay a premium on, for rated buildings. So these are some of the aspects. And also there are a lot of other than properties that are developed by the third-party real estate sector, there are many in most of the smaller cities, the tier 2, tier 3 cities, most of the residential properties are developed by the end users themselves. So they buy a plot and then they build a house. And many of them are not aware of green ratings. Many of them do not want green ratings. And also there are some who really want to make sustainable properties, but they do not go for ratings. So these are some of the things that I wanted to highlight when it comes to residential sector. And to incentivize developers to go for these kind of green ratings and to adhere to certain sustainability standards, the Ministry of Environment and Forests, they have provided, they say that they will fast track the environmental clearance if the buildings are already pre-certified. Some of the city corporations, they are giving a discount on property tax if, this is so that individual homeowners are incentivized to buy properties which are green rated. Then for all developers in most of the states, they are giving an additional FAR of ranging between 5 to 15%, so that people go for these sustainable practices. And some states are also are giving anywhere between 20% reduction in approval fees to all the way 100% exemption of approval fees. So like this, there are various incentives that are provided by the central government, the state government, and the city governments. Plus, there are also financial institutions which are giving, loans at lower interest rates. They are financing energy efficiency audits, retrofits, and all of them. And they're also providing loans to buy equipment such as solar water heaters and such. So these are some of the incentives that are provided by the government side. So, and when we go to the hospitality sector, we see that the acceptance of the green rating is quite high in the hospitality sector. Most of the buildings are rated by one or the other agency. It may not be our IGBC lead or Griha. It could be any other, green rating agency. But they are going for this because operating costs are quite high in the hospitality sector because of the way they function, and bringing down these operating costs are very, very important for them. And the presence of international brands is also, pushed the acceptance levels of green rating in the hospitality sector. So when we look at the key issues that the building industry is facing, first of all, there is a lack of awareness. Yes, the consumers are not aware of the cost benefits of a green building. So creating awareness among buyers is an important thing. The second thing is the rating system that we have right now in India is mostly a one-time rating. Most of them, once the building is rated IGBC Gold or Platinum, then we are not going to check on an annual basis whether they are still maintaining those levels. So there are no annual audits of energy and water consumption or waste generation. Then also we are not setting targets, to improve energy performance. So those are, and also the use of renewable energy and all that. But I have seen in my experience, there are a lot of commercial office properties which are, setting targets. They're trying to improve their energy performance and things like that. That's mostly motivated by, bringing down the operational costs. And this is happening mostly in the very high-end grade A, investable grade, office spaces. But the normal office spaces are not going in for all these things. But this is where a lot of scope is there. This is where we are supposed to move towards. And these are some of the steps that we need to take. And post-pandemic, there are a lot of opportunities that have come up. Now people are giving a lot of importance to health and safety in buildings. And so there is a great potential in the residential segment to, increase the green building footprint in the residential segment. At the same time, it is also seen that, a lot of the office space in the top 6 cities, they are 20 years old. So that means that they have reached a stage where there is an impetus for that is also because fitouts have to be realigned fit. And when we are doing this, there is a lot of things to be thought about over here. One is, how do we include sustainability in these retrofits? So, when we talk about retrofits, there is a lot of wastage that is going to happen from the existing fit outs. How are you going to sustainably dispose these things? That is a point that needs to be looked at. Similarly, there are new types of properties that are coming up, such as, data centers, which are really energy guzzlers. So how are we going to handle these things? This segment is just starting, right? So would it be easy for us to, bring in the sustainability practices, right? From the beginning? How do we bring in, the use of renewable energy in these kind of high energy utilizing methods of construction, architecture, and how that into the mainstream? Because right now what is happening is, there is a building which is using all the active methods, and then we are only trying to bring down the energy consumption. But if you go down, so how do we bring in all those things? How do real estate industry is a very big question that we need to address. And I would like to conclude by saying that sustainability is only achievable if each one of us as individuals change our, attitude towards and energy use. So I think with that, I would like to conclude.
Thank you so much, Shweta. I think there are a couple of questions. Let me
Yes.
see if they want to ask it themselves. And if there are other questions, please do raise your hand. We will unmute you. We'll take a couple and we will unmute you for that. Mr.